Good morning, everybody. If you don't know who I am, my name is Micah Van Dyken, and I'm the Director of Community Life here at Payless Community Church. And I have to say, I am genuinely really excited for Lent this year. You know, that's something I don't think I've ever said before. I'm excited for Lent this year. But we're doing some pretty cool stuff around here. Instead of giving something up for Lent this year, we are doing Lent generously as a church. And we are doing that with thousands of other Christians around the world. We're doing something called the 40 Acts Challenge this Lent. And we are challenging every person here to do something generous every day, or at least once during your week, so that to help us all better understand God's generosity this Easter, right? And I think this is a really cool thing. So this past week, the challenge was to write somebody an encouraging note. You guys remember this? Pastor Steve challenged us last week to either write somebody an encouraging note or to attend the Passover Seder dinner that we had this past Wednesday, and to share your experience on social media with the hashtag PCC40Acts. Yeah, I'm cool. What's up? And every week in our service, we're going to highlight some of the things that we've been doing around here, some of the ways that God's been using us to be generous. So we're going to have some of those on the screen behind me. This was from Deb Muldowney. She was awesome and bought somebody McDonald's for breakfast. How cool is that? And if anybody wants to do that on church sometime next week, because I won't be here this next week, but the week after that, a sausage and egg and cheese McGriddle is my weakness. We got another person who wrote a nice card to somebody to let somebody know they were thinking of them. How awesome is that? We've got some handsome-looking gentlemen here who were smashing things. We've got another very thoughtful card for somebody. This is a picture from our Seder dinner, eating matzo ball soup. Yum. And then Kristen Kruzik checking in with a friend. So at least a couple of us responded to this. So for anybody who did, thank you so much for posting. It's awesome to see what God's doing around here. Every single small act of generosity that we're part of takes us as a church one step closer to living and loving more like Jesus, right? And that's what we're all about here. So here's your challenge for this next week, and I really love these challenges. This week, we're asking you to either buy a coffee or a meal for a complete stranger. Maybe that's the person behind you in line at Starbucks, or maybe that's the homeless person that you walk past every single day. So find somebody this week and buy them a meal or a cup of coffee, just because. How cool is that? But if you don't have a chance to do that, everybody can do this next one, right? Find a way to make somebody smile this week. We can all do that, right? Anybody can do that. So find a way to make somebody smile. And if you get a chance to take a picture, either before you're buying a meal for somebody or maybe of the result, you know, somebody in their car behind you freaking out because somebody just paid for their meal, or the smile that you put on somebody's face, take a picture of that and post it, share it with everybody, again, the hashtag PCC40Acts, so that we all get to enjoy it, right? I would love to see a whole ton of cool things like we just saw. And speaking of smiling faces, Jill stole my thunder on this already, but I have some good news. Katie and I had a new baby. James Timothy Van Dyken was born at 8:13 on Friday night. He was healthy. It was awesome. It was way easier than the first baby we had. So everything went super well. And if you think I look a little tired this morning, that's because I am. And you should probably get used to it, because we haven't even involved our 2-year-old in the process yet. So those two are gonna. I have a feeling I'm gonna be pretty tired for a while. Before I move on, I want to say a quick thank you to Sean Scanlon, Pastor Steve, Jill Long, Alex Salto, and the rest of our entire staff for making sure that I could focus all my time and my energy on my family this weekend instead of having to be worried about anything having to do with this. They were all awesome over the past couple weeks, making sure everything went smoothly this morning. I also want to thank my wife for letting me be here. She's a saint. And for the nurses at the hospital and for our family, for making it so that I can be here and be excited to preach and not worried about Katie not being taken care of. She's in really good hands. I have to say, I am so grateful that I have such an awesome community around us. Thank you for that. And you know, there's nothing quite like having a baby to remind you how important and essential it is to have community around you, right? Man, people step up when you have a baby. So I've got to brag about my in-laws for a little bit. My wife Katie's parents let us live with them for 5 weeks, which was originally supposed to be 2 weeks. They let us live with them for 5 weeks while we redid our kitchen so that we could be ready for this baby to come. And that is an even bigger sacrifice than it sounds. Katie's parents had to live through Addie's transition to a big girl bed, from a crib to a big girl bed. And let me tell you, those were not fun weeks. I don't even want to remember. And Katie's parents got to know the real Micah and Katie, right? Not just the nice holiday versions that they get to see. They got to see us when pregnancy hormones clashed with exhaustion and frustration. And our conversations got a little bit noisier than they usually are. Thin walls, not a good idea. So when we moved out, I'm pretty sure my in-laws had already packed all of our bags for us. But I also have to tell you, I felt more loved that day by them than I have in a long time, right? So I absolutely love my family, right? I don't always like my family, but we love each other. And I got to tell you, Katie and I absolutely depend on our family. My mom watches Addie 3 days a week. Katie's mom picks up nights and weekends, and my little sister Kelsey gets Addie shoved on her pretty much the rest of the time. I got to say, I could not do this job like I do it without them. And the reason that one of the reasons Katie and I were able to redo our kitchen and make it as beautiful as it is first because my wife is super talented at creating beautiful spaces on a really tight budget, but also because that we know that if anything crazy would happen in the next couple of weeks that we wouldn't be able to afford, Katie's dad would step up and do whatever it would take to make sure we were taken care of, right? He's got this awesome gift of generosity, and he loves to show his love for his family by giving. So we knew that we would be taken care of. So for us, being family means doing life together, right? It means showing up for each other and taking care of each other. It means, enjoying being together. And I got to tell you, it's awesome to be a part of. I love my family. We had my brother-in-law, or my brother and his family came down from Wisconsin, and I got to spend some time with them at the hospital last night, and it was just awesome to be part of that. Now, don't get me wrong, we frustrate each other. My brother, who I was just talking about, he loves to bring up stories about when we shared a room together, and they're never good stories. So we frustrate each other. We misunderstand each other, and we hurt each other sometimes. But we also rely on each other, right? And we love being part of each other's lives. And I know that that's what family means for a lot of you guys too, right? Because I watch you. It sounds a little creepy, but I get to see how you interact with your families. I can tell because how you act. So we have some parents here who make a 3-hour drive each way to watch their son play basketball, and they do it like twice a month. I make that trip once a summer, and it's exhausting. That is commitment. We have a family here who sets aside every single Sunday as their family day, and they don't let any other thing touch it, even church things like youth group. I think that is awesome. We have grandparents here who have made time intentionally to travel all over the country just so they can spend time with their grandkids and make sure they get quality time with their grandkids. And we have families here like the Jans, who took turns faithfully bringing Jane and Lauren to church every single Sunday without ever grumbling about it. Have you ever not seen a smile on their face when they're walking up? That is honoring your parents. And that's a testimony to the kind of loving parents that Jane and Lauren are and the family that they raised. Around here, we know what family looks like done well. If you're taking notes, that's actually your first fill in the blank. We know what family looks like done well. We have grandparents helping watch and raise grandkids here. I work with teenagers who actually enjoy spending time with their families. And we have some families here who have mastered the art of the family meal. We know what it looks and what it feels like to love like family here. And so we know what it must have been like back at the start of the church. We have some idea of what it felt like to belong to the church that we see in Acts 2, because that's how they loved. They loved like family. You see, this Lent, we're going back to the start as a church. And we're looking at the book of Acts, and we're asking, what was it about that church that changed the world? How did they make such an impact on their world that we're still talking about it 2,000 years later? And our passage for today is kind of like a snapshot answer to that question. See, Pentecost had just happened, and the Holy Spirit had just blown everybody's mind with fire and foreign languages, and now instead of a couple hundred people following Jesus, there's 3,000. And I love the description of what this community of 3,000 brand new Christ followers was like, with Pentecost fresh on their minds and the Holy Spirit just coursing through them. It says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everybody was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together, and they had everything in common. They sold their property and their possessions to give to anybody who had a need. Every day, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Man, isn't that something you would want to be a part of? I'm going to read a chunk of the 40 Acts small group study from this week because it says what I want to say way better than I could actually say it. So here goes. What is church? There are a lot of metaphors in the Bible to bring this concept to life. It's a body, it's a building made of living bricks, and it's a family. This passage in Acts describes a group of mostly unrelated people living as a family does. They eat together, they see each other's needs as their own, they view their assets as common property, and their lives are intertwined. When you come into your family home, you don't see the sofa as yours and the armchair as your sister's. It's just the family furniture. You love each other as a matter of course, but you also have tensions and conflict to work out. For the early church, generosity was built into community life because they understood that they belonged to each other. See, back at the start, the church acted like a family. That's your second fill in the blank. Back at the start, the church loved like family. They did family well. They ate together. They made time to be together. They worshiped together. They laughed together. And they saw God move together. Right? They opened up to each other. They asked each other for help when they needed it. And then they got to see God go and meet their needs through the people around them. And do you know what the result was? Everybody won. The church itself became filled with glad and sincere people. Isn't that what we wish the church was known for? Everybody around them was blown away by what God was doing. And even these people's neighbors started to like them better. Some of those neighbors even liked them so much that they joined the church on a daily basis. Can you imagine being part of that? And you know what the good news is for us? Because of Jesus, we're family too. Our church can look like that too. That's your third fill in the blank. Because of Jesus, we're family too. Now, we're not family because we're all related, though sometimes it kind of feels that way around here. We're not family because we all act and think and worship the same way. I don't know many families that do that anyways. We're family for the same reason the church in Acts became a family. Because we believe that Jesus rose from the dead and that changes everything, even who we consider family. Andy Stanley, who's the pastor at North Point Church, maybe you've heard of him, likes to say that if somebody predicted that they were going to die and rise again, and then that guy actually pulled it off, we should probably listen to what that guy's got to say, right? That can be funny sometimes, but that's actually what happened at the start of the church, right? Because these first 3,000 Jesus followers were so convinced that Jesus rose again, they started living out what he said. And they found that when Jesus said something like Luke 18, verse 29, I assure you that everyone who has given up a house or a wife or brothers or parents or children for the sake of the kingdom of God will be repaid many times over in this life and will have eternal life in the world to come. They found that he wasn't talking about prosperity. He was talking about becoming part of the church and how his followers would love so much like family. They started taking Jesus at his word when he said things like, don't be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that won't wear out, treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. The early church did that. They sold their things and shared them with anybody who needed it. Their stuff wasn't as important to them as their church family. Or how about when Jesus said, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know you're my disciples, if you love one another. And that's exactly what happened, wasn't it? That kind of sacrificial, hands-on way that Jesus loved the disciples became the new normal for how the disciples loved other people. And that's how the world came to know Jesus, through the way that his followers loved people. Later on, the Apostle Paul would explain to a different church why Jesus' followers can love that same way. See, Paul was this Jewish guy who started out killing Christians, but then he met Jesus. He encountered Jesus on the Damascus Road. And eventually he started planting churches that were filled with Jews like him and Gentiles like you and me. We owe a lot to this guy. People that normally wouldn't even be caught in the same room together. And Paul explained to one of those countercultural churches in a place called Ephesus that Jesus followers aren't just supposed to hang out together, they're family, because we've all been adopted by the same Father. He reminded them that God decided in advance to adopt us into his family by bringing us to himself through Jesus Christ. That's what he wanted to do, and it gave him great pleasure. See, because of Jesus, we're family. And when we live like it, it gives God great pleasure. So we've talked about how we do family really well here, and we've talked about how we're family now. So let's talk about what that means. How can we love more like family this week? That's your last fill in the blank. How can we love more like family this week? Can you imagine what it might look like around here if we start loving our church family as well as we love our immediate families? Can you imagine being on the receiving end of that kind of love? Man, when I dream big, I imagine empty nester parents driving 3 hours to watch the basketball game of the kid that they've been mentoring since junior high. I imagine it's our high school and college students who are the ones that are driving some of our senior members to church because they've spent so many years building relationships together. I imagine our church becoming the first place we turn when we need something instead of one of the last places. And I imagine our neighbors being grateful they live by us and grateful that we're part of this church because we're becoming such generous, glad, and sincere people. And I imagine free babysitting on my birthday. So Katie and I can go on a date or just take a nap and escape from 2 kids for a while. Just kidding about that one. Katie and I can afford a babysitter, but it would make us feel very loved. And you know what's awesome? I know that some of this stuff is already happening here. I've seen it. I've seen the men's group shoveling snow. I've been invited to take turns babysitting for somebody who needed it. Alex Salto calls Mark and Lynn Lockout his adopted parents already. This family stuff is happening here. And I cannot wait until loving people irrationally like this, loving people like they're our immediate family, is what we become known for around here. So how do we take a step closer to that? In the spirit of 40 Acts, I'm going to suggest 3 different challenges you can respond to this week. The first challenge is to get in touch with your deacon. See, your deacon is here to help you do church family well. If you're a covenant partner here, you are part of a deacon family. And we want to help you connect with your family so that you can show up for them when they need it and so that they can show up for you when you need it. So if you don't know who your deacon is, talk to me or talk to Anita Stocks and we'll let you know. And if you've never met your deacon, just start with an introduction. It can be an email. And if you and your deacon talk more than you and your own family, then ask your deacon how you can start caring for somebody else in your deacon family. The second challenge I have for you is to break bread with somebody in our church that you don't know very well. Right? This one's a little bit more intentional and maybe a little bit more awkward, but eat food with somebody new. Make time to grab or to take somebody out from church and get a cup of coffee or have lunch together or maybe invite somebody into your home. I know we've got some people who would love to do that. And if somebody else invites you, please say yes. Nobody likes rejection. And try to do it with somebody that you don't know so well. Maybe that's somebody from a different generation than you. I think that would be awesome. Or maybe go as a group. Just make sure to include enough new people that nobody feels too uncomfortable, right? When you invite one new person into your group, that's a little weird. See, the point here is to be intentional about getting to know somebody here. We can't be church family if we don't know each other. And if you're not sure who to invite Alex Salto. He's right here. He's awesome at making new friends, and he loves coffee. So ask him sometime this week to go out for a cup of coffee. And he said I could say that. And for me, I think the third option I have for you guys is the most challenging. The third challenge I have for you brave souls, is to share a need that you have and invite somebody in this church to meet it. Right? I think this one's really hard for a lot of us. It's hard to be vulnerable. So this doesn't have to be huge. Maybe it's just asking somebody to babysit or to help you move. Maybe it's asking someone to help you tackle that project that you want to get done. Or maybe it's just asking someone to sit with you or to walk with you or to talk with you. Right? So be vulnerable this week. And if you've been invited to help somebody, be generous. Let's love like family this week. Let me challenge you to pick one of these things this week and act on it. And let me challenge you to act on that on top of doing our church-wide challenges of buying coffee or dinner for a stranger or making somebody smile, right? Try to do that and this. Let's practice loving like family this week so that everybody wins. Will you pray with me?